Hello, my name is Jeremy Baver, the Executive Director of Hartford 2000. Today we're here to celebrate the history of our wonderful organization. Hartford 2000 had been established in 2001, however it had met informally for many years prior, and tonight we're going to be hearing from many of those founding members and long-serving board members of the organization. Hartford 2000's is a coalition of Hartford's 13 NRZs in the city of Hartford, and our mission is to strengthen the individual and collective capabilities of the neighborhoods and to serve as a neighborhood advocate. The purpose for tonight is to bring together all of these founders and the leaders of our organization to memorialize the history and to track the progress of Hartford 2000. Tonight I'm going to be introducing Edie Lacey, one-time co-chair, long-time serving board member and founder of the organization. Bernadine Silvers, long-time co-chair, founder of the organization, longest-serving member of our organization. Jackie McKinney, long-time board member, co-chair, and a wonderful person who has always been helpful to our organization. Linda Baer, one of the founders, one of the originators, a staff member, a volunteer, a board member, and one of the initial people who have been so meaningful to the organization. Joe Barber, longtime board member and also a former co-chair. And I will be passing this off to our moderator for the evening, Patricia Johnson, and our assistant moderator who's behind the scenes, Mitzi Martin.
Thank you. Good evening, distinguished founders, board members, and builders of Hartford 2000. Hartford 2000 has been a significant organization in the city of Hartford, and over the past several decades has been an advocate and supporter of community building as no other existing organization has. So it is my pleasure to talk with you this evening and to hear your perceptions and your experiences to share with our community and our city. I'm going to start by asking you to think about thinking of Hartford 2000. What is the first thing that comes to mind? Edie, I'm going to ask you first.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind was that prior to Hartford 2000, we were all neighborhoods feeling alone. Even though we were connected geographically, we did not speak the same language, we didn't have the same needs. So for me, Hartford 2000 was the first time that a light came in the sky and I saw unity somewhere, that I didn't feel so alone in my neighborhood, nor did my neighbors.
Wow.
So it was unity for me.
Exciting. Bernadine, what comes to mind when you think of Hartford 2000?
Happiness. Before Hartford 2000, I mean, in my own neighborhood, I felt a large group of people who live, work, recreate, and worshiped in our community work together to build. But it was so wonderful. I'm a Hartford native, and it was so wonderful to get together with people from all over our city, which is only a few miles. But it was almost like 1,000 miles when you talk about not working together, not knowing each other, thinking that everyone else had something and you weren't getting anything. But to get at a table with people who really cared about Hartford and really wanted to work together to ensure that we were able to do something together in Hartford was just like an amazing experience for me.
Thank you, Bernadine. Jackie.
Hartford 2000 for me is community. I grew up in Hartford too. I was born and raised in Hartford. And community was just the area that I really grew up in. I grew up in the Blue Hills neighborhood. Weaver High School was my high school. So it was kind of a very small area. The first time I came to Hartford 2000, I think that was the sense I had of community. It was bigger than the block you grew up in or the neighborhood that you grew up in. It encompassed all 18 square miles. And so to this day, I always see is Hartford an opportunity for community, for me to interact and be with people who live across town instead of down the street.
Wow. And Linda Baer.
What comes to mind first is the neighborhood revitalization zones, the NRZs. We first got together because we were creating NRZs in Hartford. It's a state program, which has no money to it, but a state program nonetheless, where people can define their neighborhood as they see fit, building on what Jackie was just saying, that you define your area, your neighborhood, your community in a certain way, and that's what the NRZs could do. It doesn't have to be some border that the mayor set up or anything. And I think the growth of NRZs and the growth of Hartford 2000 came together, happened at the same time, and I think it's made a difference in Hartford.
That's a tough question. I moved to Hartford in 1996, and I was trying to figure out a way to get involved, and I think I was at what were those meetings? The public safety meetings.
Public safety meetings, yeah.
City Hall. I forget the acronym.
Yeah.
But I remember being there and seeing like all these Hartford residents who were like fighting to keep their city, and I was just really inspired and wanted to get more involved since I decided I was going to stay here and live in Hartford. And I must have run into Pam Griffin or Peg Stewart, who told me about the Marge NRZ, which was the neighborhood I was living in. So I started going to those meetings in, I think, the fall of '96. I wasn't part of the start of the NRZ, so I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into. And then sometime after that, Hartford 2000 was formed, which I was not involved with initially, but when I did, I joined a committee, and then eventually I was a board member through Frog Hollow. And one of the things what I really liked about Hartford 2000 was that it had all the neighborhoods around the table. And again, I was still relatively new to Hartford, so it seemed as if for the first time, from what the people tell me, it was sort of indeed for the first time. And it's always been my belief, we're too small a city to be sort of fighting for the crumbs from the table. So I always felt like Hartford 2000 was the place where we all could be together. We could all realize we have probably most issues in common, and we could be just a force for making the city better. So all my colleagues here have said sort of similar things: unity, community, love, and sort of all those things would apply, or what I'm thinking too. And really, in many ways, Hartford 2000, in a lot of ways, besides my job, sort of brought me up in Hartford. Like, I was involved for a very long time, and probably most of the people that I know in Hartford, directly or indirectly, came through that experience.
Sounds like
say
Hartford.
something?
Sorry.
Yeah, okay. So I met you right after you graduated from college.
No grad school.
Grad school, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
And I believe we were painting some notices on the drains.
Storm drain, essentially.
Storm drain, yeah.
But I was an airport member, yeah.
You started out being a hands-on volunteer, and I think that's also what Hartford 2000 is about, volunteers.
Pulling people together.
Yep.
It sounds like Hartford 2000 was a significant force, really. The first force in pulling all the neighborhoods together and bringing together the resources and support. So thinking about the very beginnings of Hartford 2000, what do you recall about why Hartford 2000, what came into existence? Why was it created?
Money. We found out that there was, and please correct me
Yeah.
because my mind's a little fuzzy about this, but we did find out that there were funds available to neighborhoods as long as they organized in a certain way and completed certain steps that could be used for the revitalization of their neighborhoods. And all of us, without exception, had dire needs in the neighborhood. If that was the way that we were going to help our neighborhoods, and we were going to go through the hoops and sign the papers and do what we needed to do.
So had people been getting together prior to the announcement of those resources?
As I recall, informally, yeah.
Well, if I may. There was the program that Joe just alluded to, which was organizations in each neighborhood that were around public safety issues. And we have to look up the name of this thing because we can't remember what it is.
Remember it either.
Comprehensive Communities Partnership, CCP.
Yes, thank you.
CCP.
Yes.
And that was pretty much staffed by the city government. And when the state legislation was passed, which was the baby of Nick Carbone, to create neighborhood revitalization zones, the city government staff went out to these CCP groups and said, do you want to be an NRZ? Here are the benefits, here's what you have to do, et cetera, et cetera. And a bunch of neighborhoods said yes. And then we heard from Governor Rowland that I believe we heard through Mayor Peters that $14 million would be set aside for Hartford.
17, I thought at first.
17.
17.
Well, maybe.
And
Okay.
then, but we couldn't get it. It was going to be in tranches.
Oh, please. Yes, right. I've never liked that term. So we brought all the NRZs together in the auditorium of the Hartford Public Library downtown and tried to explain as to what this money could be used for and did people want to apply, and it was a rousing yes. I also remember that we had a terrible rainstorm and all the water came down the auditorium down to the front. It's like,
Oh, man.
okay.
That's not a sign.
Tried to wash us away.
Tried to wash us away.
They couldn't
but
do
They
it.
couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. So then so then the group would just kept meeting to do the money part of it that Edie was talking about, and then what was his name? The
Peter
Elif. Do you want to tell it or?
Well, Peter Ellis, who worked for Governor Rowland, said that we all could participate in this process, but one of the NRZs could not do so because they had gotten $7 million a year before from their state rep or their senator. I don't know what he was at the time. And our thing was it was going to be all or nothing, because we had never sat at the table together and we had developed a camaraderie and we were really together on this process, and either you're going to give it to us all or because we knew the reason why we had not gotten anything before was because people pitted us against each other, having us thinking that he got it, she got it, she got it, and she got it, when none of us was really getting it. And so it was okay for this group to have gotten the money a year ago before we started, but we said, it's all or nothing. And we took that chance, and I think Governor Rowland was the one that influenced that it would be all, that we would do it like that, and it began like that. And I think the other thing that kept us together was the fact that in this, with City Manager Sandra Key Borges and Linda working with her on this, we developed a plan for the money. And there were some strict guidelines around what you could do with it. Of course, many of us not having any idea, most of us not having any idea about raising money, we tried to get, some of us, the whole $17 million for ourselves. I don't know how we were going to spend it, but, we felt this was the time. Now, there was a rule. You had to be able to do certain things with it, and you had to be able to raise the money to go with it. So how we were going to raise $17 million, I don't know. But there was some foresight in, if nothing else, everyone, once we got everything back, we knew we would have some trouble because of the way some of the plans were written. And our thing was we had to, if anything did occur, what had to occur was we had to get money for strategic planning. And that was an important key that nobody lost. Everybody at the table got something out of this funding, and we didn't get to 17 million, but we started, I think, with 7 million, and then there was another 7 million, and I don't think we got the last of it.
I don't think we did either.
No, there were two,
two tranches.
Yeah.
Yes. And,
Does that mean there's one tranche to go?
yeah, but it's
Yeah.
gone.
If anybody
And
remembers,
It's gone.
we had, and that brings to mind one of our dear friends, Mohammed, I don't know what his last name is.
Ahmed.
Mohammed, who, he loved the word tranche,
Yes.
but he also was committed to getting it, and was unsuccessful in the end, but really put his whole soul into the money for the NRCs.
But that's what really kept us together, that the folks at the table knew that we were for each other, and that we were going to stand back to back and make sure that we all benefited from being at that table. And that's a really important thing, you know, something that had not necessarily happened in Hartford before, because the climate was everybody get what you can get for yourself. That was the climate that was produced, and would everyone agree with that?
Absolutely.
And this gave us an opportunity, and it's because the neighborhood revitalization zone legislation puts the residents as the most important piece of it. I mean, you have the residents, you have property owners, you have business folks at it, but the residents had the majority of the say. And as residents, we were invested at that table, you know, and we wanted to make sure that we all benefited. And I think that's the key to what Hartford 2000 was about, and the reason why we currently still exist today.
The unity and
The unity, which is something that
Now-
is unique.
Don't mistake unity for sweetness and light.
Oh, no. Oh,
We-
no.
we
It's
became
a tough group.
I didn't say light.
No, I wasn't saying you did, but we used to, when we first started meeting, informally, we met on the 4th floor of Hartford City Hall. Now, first of all, in the summer, it was like 180 degrees, and it was pretty small, pretty tight, and we have had, and still do, a lot of members who are, shall we say, characters, and who have strong opinions, and who like to express them. And it's sometimes in the beginning, perhaps not with the full realization that someone else was speaking when you started to speak. And so the group rather, developed a set of ground rules. And among them is don't interrupt somebody, don't have another conversation in the room. They're very basic things, but it made a huge difference in how people could discuss controversial
And we read
issues.
those ground rules now before every meeting.
Okay.
And other organizations have
Yes,
borrowed our
that's right.
ground rules.
Even
yeah.
the city council borrowed
That's
them
right,
one year.
yes.
Oh.
So,
If I may go back a moment to the point of earlier legislation, what was the original intent or motivation for the legislation to provide these dollars for Hartford neighborhoods? What do you recall about that?
There's a difference between the legislation that created the NRZs and the money, which I don't think had legislation. I think
No.
it was the governor's
Yeah.
pot of money.
So it
The
was,
the NRZ legislation was enabling legislation,
Right.
so that cities, actually there were certain cities that were identified.
It had a lot of blight.
Yeah, basically had to have a certain amount of blighted properties. It might have even been, it was a pretty low bar, but then those cities that had blighted properties could form these NRZs.
What-
The money piece came
Later.
later, yeah.
Right.
Was it a Clinton legislation? Did it derive from Washington? It derived.
Well, our own NRZ
Not
stuff
that I
came from
remember.
Connecticut. I
Yeah.
don't know if it was
Yeah.
But you know
inspired by
what was
something
really
else, but-
unique about it? We had a unique piece in Hartford at that time. We had Governor Rowland, we had Mike Peters, and other people, I mean, in other areas like Bridgeport and everywhere else had people that were interested in this legislation because, again, it empowered residents. They were the majority. This is the first time residents had the majority of the influence in a group. And I think it was at a time when people were empowered that really recognized and really believed in the legislation and really put everything in it to make it happen, from Governor Rowland to Mike Peters to Sandra Key Borges, and then the staff. And we had urban planners then who really were important because each one was assigned to an NRZ, and they provided their urban planning experience, you know, to help us plan, because that's what we were supposed to be doing, planning for our community.
To revitalize.
To
The
revitalize
blighted
it.
neighborhoods.
So how was the technical assistance and support facilitated? Like,
They came to our meetings, to our NRZ meetings. They provided the professional assistance that would be required to develop a plan and to also to implement a plan.
The city
Mhm.
had many more planners then than they do now, but
Mhm.
as Bernadine just explained, every neighborhood had a planner, and every neighborhood had 2 senior staff people with the city who were members of the NRZ. So, for instance, Bruno Mazzula and I we were the 2 reps to Parkville. We only had 1 vote, so we had to work it out between us. But because they figure that we all have a lot of night meetings, we might not go to all of them, so there at least would be 1 person there. And then the city also put aside money to hire professional strategic planning firms to help each neighborhood create their strategic plan for revitalization, which is required. It's not required that you hire somebody, but it's required by the state legislation that each NRZ have that kind of plan. And if I'm correct, help me if I go wrong, I believe that there was an RFP, request for proposals,
Yeah.
and then there was a committee
A
of you
committee.
all that,
And all of us, we selected our own.
Right.
We had a charrette.
yeah.
And I think the city is put out the RFP,
Mhm.
and then they vetted the different people to see if they fit what, fit the bill,
If they could do the job.
if they could do the job. And then we had a charrette, and we chose the people that we wanted to help us do what we needed to do.
So I think there were 4 or 5 firms.
There were about 6, I think.
6 firms.
6 firms,
And you
and
could
and
pick which
everyone
one you
had,
wanted.
yeah, you could pick whichever one you wanted to. And that was the other thing, we were empowered, probably for the first time. They always had so-called leaders sitting at the table, but in this instance, we really made the decisions, and that was very empowering, and that allowed us to continue to be together.
The other thing that happened as this was progressing was the major institutions in each neighborhood started picking up their ears and figuring, well, this would probably be a good thing for us too. I'm thinking Trinity College for Frog Hollow and the Hartford Hospital and some other institutions. They started ponying up with consultants and planners and taking our ideas, the residents' ideas, and starting to say, well, how can we do curb cuts for this? How can we plan per code for that sort of thing? In Frog Hollow, we had an abandoned bus yard that was polluted and had to be cleaned, environmentally cleaned. And we, as residents, planned for there to be schools and housing on that plot. Eventually it changed, as all things change, but at least it got cleaned up and at least something went on in that area, which was a learning corridor now.
So do I hear you saying that this formulation kind of engendered other institutions and agencies and organizations to come together?
Well, for my NRZ, we already were doing that. When the legislation came in, we just adopted it because we had already had everyone at the table in our community.
Okay.
But what that did for us, we were able to then do an action plan from our plan. So we did a business plan so that we could execute our plan because there wasn't any lack of plans in the city. It was how are you going to actually actualize them, make them come to fruition. And so that's what we were able to do in our cases. And you can't do it without everybody. You need to look at a geographical boundary. It doesn't have to be a neighborhood, but you have to look at a geographical boundary and look at what's in that boundary and how the resources in that boundary can fit into the plan so they can help you do what you need to do. And for the first time, I think that's what Edie described, that all of the institutions within the particular geographical boundary, decided they would work with the residents, get at the table, and use their expertise to make things happen at that table. And that was something that was unique and important.
In the course of my work with other cities, New Haven, Bridgeport, I have found only one other existing NRZ, although in many of those cities they attempted to put together neighborhood revitalization zone organizations. To what do you attribute the ability of Hartford to actually pull that off?
Right?
I don't know. Our city was definitely unique because you're right, most of the other cities that went down that road chose one area, and they were focused on that. And like I said, I wasn't right there at the beginning, but what I heard from others, like Jim Sequin, I remember saying, is like, yeah, they just said, all of Harvard's an NRZ, you guys figure it out. And sort of the NRZs went at it to figure out, or the non-NRZs before they became NRZs went at it. And
The community folk?
figured out their boundaries. And I mean, I honestly don't know why it worked here as opposed to other places, but I think there was already somewhat of a process in place, like the CCP thing, the problem-solving committees. There were processes already taking place where people were engaged as neighbors and even meeting together through the CCP process. So I imagine that has something to do with it, but I would defer to people who've been here longer.
I think also, I mean, Bridgeport had one up until recently. If it's gone, I didn't know that.
New Britain.
New Britain have a couple. Stanford have a couple. Even though you think they may not need them, but they did. Sorry.
You know, I've traveled across the country, and I usually go by car, so you always meet people that you don't meet when you fly into the airport and then get out and go to it. And what I found in the city of Hartford is that we're unique in the fact that we're very diverse, and there is often an opportunity for you to engage with people maybe not of your own economic status, your own educational status, your own cultural status, but you can find that you'll find people together uniquely that do things together. And I think that has always been the history of Hartford, because it's always been a city where people came to because, unbeknownst to a lot of people now, this was a city where all the jobs were, and so consequently people had to learn to live together with their differences. And I think that all of that helped to allow people, once there was a table to get together, to really do that. And you don't find that everywhere.
So there was kind of a framework for inclusion or diversity already?
I believe so. Some people that disagree with me, but I truly believe that there's an opportunity for us, for people that live, work, recreate, and worship in the city, to really get together at various times and be together. There was a time when downtown everybody was together at a certain time. Was it 8 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock at night or on a Saturday afternoon? So people were used to being together in a diverse, you may have lived in a certain neighborhood, but you came together, and I think that has helped to, for us to continue to be together in this instance. I just think that, because I think we're really a unique city. And other people know we are. Those of us who are here don't know we are. But we are a great city still. I mean, we have a lot to do. We have to make sure there are jobs and everything else. But we are a great city as far as I'm concerned.
There's like 13, 14 neighborhoods, and they're all very unique. It's hard to believe in 18 square miles you could have that many unique neighborhoods. But they are unique. Like little families. What we have in common is a basic same DNA, some basic DNA. But we're little individual personalities. And I think Hartford 2000 came, and it was a time for people to hook up. And whatever Hartford 2000 did, there was no need to let go. To this day, we lose a neighborhood here or there, and then they come back. Yeah, but something about Hartford 2000, it was, I don't know, Velcro or something. Once you got in there, you couldn't get out. I came to my first Hartford 2000 meeting, and I never left. That's all I needed. So I don't think I'm that unusual, but it didn't happen to other people.
You know, it was a heady experience for residents
Yeah.
in all of our NRZs, in all of our neighborhoods, to finally have some power. And
That's
some
true.
power that they could really see the result of. They could see a building coming down that had to come down. They could see a renovation that had to happen. And they felt proud. I felt proud. I think we all felt proud of whatever we accomplished. And it was that, and because of that, I think we all developed huge mutual respect for each other. And none of us, well, there could have been a couple, but really nobody, no neighborhood ever tried to stab each other in the back.
No.
We were
Yeah.
really united. I think that pride and that sense of respect went a long way for us. Something we hadn't had before.
So going back to the early formulation of Hartford 2000, what would you say were the defining catalysts for organizing, maintaining, and evolving Hartford 2000? What or who were those catalysts? How did that come together, and why are you still here today?
I think that there are a couple of catalysts, and you all jump in when you want to, but one was the state legislation. I don't think we ever would have formed Hartford 2000
NRZs.
without
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah. And then the money that when we said either we all get it or none of us get it, and then the governor said, well, okay, and we went, whoa, working together works better than working apart. Whoa, what a concept. I don't think we said that, but that still, it was surprising.
realized it.
Yeah, you realized it. And then I think the diversity of the people around the table, although we've always been, I think, a little lax, or I don't know what the word is, but in including the Latino community. I mean, I think that's something. But other catalyst people, I think, are the original co-chairs, and you mentioned Pam and tall woman. Peg Stewart, and Bernadine, and you were, and in those formative days, I think that they were strong personalities. You notice they're all women too, do you not? And
Just like the rest of the world.
sorry.
No, it's great.
I think the other catalyst at that time was the city of Hartford. I mean, it put money on the table, put people into it, had a commitment. The Mayor Peters, when you all told him that either all of us get it or no one takes it, he wasn't sure. He said, "Are you sure that's what they said?" And I said, "Yeah. Well, are you sure?" And then we said yes, and they won.
It was a perfect storm, but a good storm. You know,
Yeah.
one of those beautiful storms where it rains and then after it goes, the flowers come out. You know, they grow up. I'm serious. I know that's
And,
poetic,
what do
but
you
it was
call
between Governor Rowland, Mayor Peters, and I'm talking about Hartford now, Sandra Key Borges, Linda, and other Jim Sequin. Please, let's
Oh,
not
yeah.
forget Jim
He's the
Sequin.
head planner.
And those folks, that's how it became a wonderful experience. And people began to recognize that there was a group that really wanted to make things happen, and they were doing it unselfishly. You know,
Yeah.
and even now, I mean, we have people that have stepped away from the table, but they're there. If they need us, we'd be there for them. And there are times when they come back, you know, they may not see that we can service them at this time because they're doing some other things. But I really, really, really believe that the perfect storm is what made Hartford 2000. And you need to know, we need to really mention that we're in transition. Jackie and I are no longer co-chairs. We have two new
We're
wonderful
retired.
co-chairs. We're retired. And there are new people on board. Our last meeting last week was really wonderful because there were new people there, and one of the exercises was why do you like Hartford, or how did you come to Hartford? And every single person around the table, it was so enlightening to have people talk about the great things, unique things about Hartford, because you always hear the bad, but you hardly ever hear the good. And these were a diverse group of people, some of whom I'd never seen before, didn't know their names. I'm going to have to remember some of their names, when I see them again. But it was really a good experience, and I think that it's not the people as much as it is the table. And a table provides an opportunity for people who care about Hartford and want to do something about that caring, but need to work with other people, an opportunity to come to that table and work. And it's not just about the new part of what Hartford 2000 is, and we're changing the name, but the new piece of it will embrace more than just NRZs. There are going to be a lot of at-large seats, there, as well as the NRZ seats that we have.
I think another, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Positive thing about the old days is that we often, I'll say parties, but it was social kinds of things
Yeah.
that enabled us to sort of interact on a more relaxed basis. One time we went to Edie's house or cottage or
the lake house.
the lake house,
Okay.
the lake house, and we had a picnic and we went swimming. I don't know what all we did, and then we had.
City Fair was one of
City
our places.
So there were those opportunities, and
Sheldon Oak.
we used to do, and maybe still do, planning sessions every year, so we knew what our work plan was. But they always incorporated a kind of a social part of it too. I always remember Joe Langlays, who from Parkville.
I know what you're gonna
I don't know what I was facilitating the meeting, and I don't know what was said, and all of a sudden he started singing, "You put your right foot in, you put your right foot out." So I joined in, and I was doing the motion. People were like hanging out, laughing.
So there was also a sense of social and playfulness and
It was.
connection.
Yeah,
Well,
And it made you feel good.
right.
So,
actually, when we talked about the ground rules, one of the things that Linda added to the end was we have fun.
Yeah.
And that's like that. I think it's just a reminder that we're dealing with. We usually have packed agendas. I know when I was running meetings back in the day, I felt like I was just a really strict traffic cop.
Yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily fun, but the idea was we have fun because we care about Hartford.
Right, right. And there's no reason you can't have fun while you're doing good things. I think we have the 1 minute sign.
So do you have anything to ask quickly in 1 minute? Come on, hurry up.
well, you've talked about the legislation, the governor, the mayor, the city. You all are the people on the ground. How did you do this, and what are you most proud of, and what do you wish for Hartford 2000? Edie?
Well, I'll tell you, Hartford 2000 was my home, and I left Hartford in 2005, but it's always going to be my home. And maybe we drank a lot, that helped.
Not at the meetings,
No, not at the meetings,
but we wished.
after the meeting.
There was such a cohesiveness. There was such a belonging. We were almost tribal. I would say we were tribal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't leave your tribe. No. And then the Cherokees met the Shoshones, and we just all came together. And it was a very beautiful, beautiful thing. A nation.
Bernadine?
There's a song, and I'm so old I can't remember everything, but I wish you bluebirds in the spring and, the cozy fire to keep you warm, but most of all, I wish you love. That's what I think about Hartford 2000, and what it's going to be. And it's going to be greater because we have new leaders with different skills and a different time, and we have new people coming on board, but the one key thing is that we all love Hartford, and that's the most important thing that it can be.
Jackie?
In 1870, Hartford was the richest city in the country. Mark Twain chose to move here because this is where all the publishing houses were. And so we had something special about us. And I think even though we've gone financially in a downturn, I don't think we ever lost that special. The it of what makes us, gives us the glue that we hang together in the good times and the bad times. So.
Okay. Linda?
So what I'm most proud of is that I think we first got together in 95, 96, and the Hartford 2000 is still together. And that's quite amazing, really.
Quite amazing. Joe?
Wow. I've always appreciated the fact that that there was a group of people who were looking at the bigger picture and not just at their neighborhoods or just their street or whatever. Hartford's too small a city to be sort of, like I said before, like, squabbling over the crumbs. And the fact that there was this group of people once a month, oftentimes more given all our other meetings, we get together and talk about the issues that we have in common, which were far more than the ones we didn't have in common, was frankly the way things should operate. And it's messy and it's not quite the way you want it to happen, but if you have the tolerance for that, and you have to, if you actually care about building community, you have to have that tolerance for ambiguity and chaos and stuff, as long as you keep your eye on that bigger picture. And that's what I always enjoyed about Hartford 2000. It was a bunch of people, like-minded people, and what we were like-minded about was that we cared about the whole city of Hartford and not just, our little piece of it. And I'm not on the board now, but I really, looking back at all the things we did do together as a group has really encouraging. And there aren't many groups like us that actually do civic engagement and building community and have stayed together as long as we have. So I look forward to the next chapter. I can't believe you're not chair anymore.
I can.
Thank you.
There's wonderful new people coming on.
There, I think you have a legacy for the past and a path for the future of Hartford. Hartford 2000, we salute you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.